reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus proposed another parable to the crowd, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be likened to a man who sowed good seed in his field. While everyone was asleep, his enemy came and sowed weeds all through the wheat and then went off. When the crop grew and bore fruit, the weeds appeared as well. The slaves of the householder came to him and said, 'Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where have the weeds come from?' He answered, 'An enemy has done this.' His slave said to him, 'Do you want us to go up and pull them up?' He replied, 'No, if you pull up the weeds, you might uproot the wheat along with them. Let them grow together until harvest. Then at harvest time I will say to the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles for burning, but gather the wheat into my barn.'" The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
In its own way, this is an enormously profound and deeply moving gospel. It's one of Jesus' parables. It's one of the ways in which he taught. Because what it's calling us to is to explore is one of the greatest mysteries of life. When we say a mystery, it means that we simply do not have the answers to it. And a major mystery of life is the mystery of evil. Where did evil come from? And why does it exist? And why doesn't God do something about it? In this parable, we have the image of the good seed being sown, and all of a sudden this evil weed is coming up and choking it to death. It seems that we have to live with the weeds among the wheat all of our lives. And then at judgment time, Jesus says, things will be evened out. But there's also something else in this parable. And not only in this parable, but in the way Jesus lived his life. We see weeds. We see evil all around us. Why do people abort or abuse children? Why do people sell drugs to teenagers? Why is an innocent person killed by a drunk driver? Why are two little children swept away by a flash flood? Why are people dying by heat stroke during these days? Why is there so much violence and physical hunger in so many countries? So how do we live in a world with so much evil? Evil is all around us. No one, even Jesus, has an answer to the mystery of evil. But Jesus does say, look, there's not an answer, but there is a way that you must act, that you must live. And throughout a lifetime, Jesus modeled that way of living. Too often we concentrate on the weeds, and we do not look at the wheat. May I express that thought by the way of several stories. Today I want to share wheat stories because we need to hear them, lest we become discouraged living among the weeds. The first story concerns a letter a pastor received. It was marked, "Please give to Harry the usher." It was handed over to Harry, and this is what it said. "Dear Harry, I'm sorry I don't know your last name, but then you don't know mine. I'm Gert. Gert at the 10 o'clock Mass every Sunday. I'm writing to ask you a favor. I don't know the priests in our parish too well, but somehow I feel close to you. I don't know how you got my first name, but every Sunday morning you smile and you greet me by name. And we exchange a few words, how hot the weather is, how much you like my hat, how I was late on a particular Sunday. I just wanted to thank you for taking the time for remembering an old woman, for the smiles, for your consideration, for your thoughtfulness. And now for a favor. I'm dying, Harry. My husband has been dead for 16 years, and the kids are scattered. It's very important to me that when they bring me to church for the last time, you will be there to say, 'Hello, Gert, good to see you.' If you're there, Harry, I will feel assured that your warm hospitality will be duplicated by my new home in heaven. With love and gratitude, Gert." I don't know how many people there are out there doing evil, but I do know that the world is full of lots of people like Harry. My next story concerns two people in Holland, Maya and Heinrich Gies. The Nazis from Germany invaded Holland in the mid-1930s, looking for Jews. And the Gies family provided for Otto Frank and his family. They were Jews, hiding from the Nazis. They hid in the attic where the Gies family members went up the secret stairs with food and with news. It was Mrs. Gies who baked the holiday cake and brought Anne Frank her first and only pair of high heels. It was she, in the end, who rescued Anne's one-day-to-be-famous diary. The Diary of Anne Frank has become a classic. Mrs. Gies insisted that she and her friends were just ordinary Dutch people. Concerning the German occupation, she wrote, "There were just two kinds of Dutch people, those who collaborated and those who resisted." In our contemporary world, there are lots of other resistors in the midst of those who collaborate with evil. And we can't forget that. My third story is about a doctor of whom I'm aware. On the back of his hallway door hangs a tattered Aldous-style coat with one sleeve patched and pockets frayed. On certain days like Thanksgiving and Christmas, or when he says he begins to feel proud or well off, he wears it with reverence. And if you ask him about it, he gives you its history. Many years ago, he said, he was a young intern serving the poor in a crowded city. And one night, in midwinter, he was awakened by the frantic cries of a child at his door, calling for him to come to the apartment down the street. He trudged through the snow and the biting wind to a dingy building, and then followed the small girl up a grimy set of stairs to a dimly lit room. He rushed inside to find a distraught father and mother bent over a limp figure on an old iron bed. Frantically, he worked to save the life of their son. But the best of his skill was not good enough. As the little boy died, the doctor suddenly began to shiver in the poorly heated tenement house. And the grief-stricken father took off his coat and gently wrapped it around the young doctor's shoulders. "You need this more than I do. You keep it. Thank you for trying to save my boy," he said. The doctor knew that this was the only coat the poor man owned. He had braved many winters in an open-air vegetable stand at the corner. But he would not have dared to refuse it that night, for it was given to him as a sacrament of love and gratitude. And if you take time to look, there are a lot of such coats like that in our world. And so the weeds and the wheat parable is also a parable of the human condition. And so often the weeds seem to be taking over and choking out all decency and civility. But as we've heard, the Lord lets them grow. He lets them grow. And in our lifetimes, we're called to make a difference where we can. That's the only response. There's no common, sensible way of dealing with evil. Evil doesn't respond to logic and common sense. And at times it's overwhelming. But the only response to evil is to really believe that you can make a difference and your actions can bring sun into the darkness. And so we're asked to greet the lonely, like Harry the usher. We're asked to resist evil, like the Geeses and Frank families. And we're asked to slip into the life of another with reverence, like the young doctor. In short, in this parable of the wheat and weeds, the approach, if not the answer to evil, is always an act of love.